All right, let me ask you this question. Have you guys ever heard this statement before? The statement that's been said. People probably say, maybe you even said it yourself before. The statement, "Let go and let God." Have you ever heard that statement before? Like, what do people mean when they say that? When they say, "Let go and let God."
Just sit back, let God take care of it.
Okay, yeah, just sit back and let God take care of it. I think that's a great way to describe it. And I think that there's two sides of it. That I would say that there's sometimes, that is an appropriate thing to say. And what would be some of those times that you could say, you know what, that would be an appropriate thing to say. That would be an appropriate thing to do because we have exhausted every possible angle, and there's nothing else that I can do, there's nothing else that I should do, and I need to just give it over to God. And I need to let Him to see what's going to take place from there. What are some scenarios that you can think of in your mind that say, that's a great illustration, that's a great saying that I just need to let go and let God take care of this?
When somebody dies.
Okay. When someone's dying, that's out of your hands. It's when someone has, let's just say they have a disease. Let's just say cancer. And it's not like, the doctors aren't doing anything anymore, right? They're still active, right? For the most part, it's not like they're doing nothing, but they're doing everything they can to say, we've reached this point. There is nothing else that we can do. This is completely into God's control. All right, so when someone's dying. All right. What else? Is there anything else that you can think of in your mind? You say, I have to let go, and I just need to understand that God is in complete control. I think that we need to start there to begin with and say, you know what? God is in control. God is sovereign. God's providence, that knows exactly how this is going to work out. I think we always need to begin there, always and forever begin there. That's our foundation, is that God is in control. But you can think of anything else in your mind or any other scenario that that's an appropriate thing to say.
In your sin.
What's that?
In your sin.
In your sin? What do you mean by that?
Meaning, you can't, you have to give God control of forgiveness of your sin.
Okay, yeah, forgiveness of your sin. You're still, but even in both of those scenarios, you're not really ever really just sitting back and doing nothing, right? Even when a person's dying, the person's still going to the doctors. They're still getting the medication. And your sin, although, my forgiveness is in God's hands, it's still on my end to repent, right? It's still on my end to go to God with it. And the reason I bring that up is sometimes I think that we have this saying of let go and let God, and so it kind of just removes my end of responsibility out of it, and I can just do nothing now, and I can just kind of wait for God to do His thing, and I can just sit back and watch. I think there are appropriate times, but more or less I think there's also times that we're waiting for God to do something, but it's in our, God is going to do something, but it is through us as an individual. Like last week. Last week we looked at Mark chapter, you guys remember what chapter we were in last week? Mark chapter 5, and we looked at the demon-possessed man. Open up your Bible to Mark chapter 5. And we looked at the demon-possessed man, the demon-possessed individual, and God did an amazing, miraculous thing, in that individual. He cast the demons out of him, left the demons, put them in the 2,000 pigs that ran off the cliff. But then what happened? What happened to this individual? As we called him, what do you guys remember last week? What we call him? What was his name? We made it up, but it's not in the Bible. But we named him Crazy Carl. So Crazy Carl turns into normal Norman. That's a great kid's name if you're ever thinking about having kids one of these days. Norman. Well, all right. Maybe that's. You don't think? My wife's pregnant. Norman Rosenberger. You don't think that's?
No.
Okay.
Norm.
All right. Norm. I like that. Norm. And what's that?
Thaddeus.
All right. Whatever. Get past that. But here he is. He's left on shore. He wants to get back with Jesus. Jesus is asked to leave the region. And Jesus says, no, you need to stay here. And you need to, here's your opportunity to share with the people around you the grace that has been given to you, the mercy that God has shown upon your life, and now it's your turn to respond. You know, you can very easily look at that situation and say, well, we're waiting for God to show His grace through this community. You know, Carl could have sat back and just looked at this and said, man, I wish God would have just stayed here and would have just, continued to teach and to reveal His mercy. But know that God has given that responsibility, Jesus in particular, given that responsibility off to this individual, and now it was his turn to actually do something. You know, he's been revealed God's goodness, he's been revealed God's grace, and now he has an opportunity to actually to go and to reveal that to others. And here we see here this morning in Mark chapter 6 is the feeding of the 5,000. And one thing that we see in here is that Jesus will tell them as individuals. Actually, look at here, Mark chapter 6, verse 37. As we see down there, Mark chapter 6, verse 37 says, as there's this crowd of people. How many people are there? Roughly 5,000 men. So that might not even be counting women and children. And what does God tell them? What does Jesus particularly tell them here in Mark chapter 6, verse 37? He answered them, he said, you give them something to eat. You give it. Many of us, I would say probably, we look down the road, we probably say, I've heard this before. We know that Jesus, He multiplies it. But what does He do? What's He tell them to do? All right. What does He tell them to do? What's that? You do it. It's like, you do it. All right, Ethan, imagine this. We got this big group of us. They're actually, our small group here, that's sitting here this morning, and we got this massive amount of people that are surrounding this area. Massive amount. Thousands of people that have come because Jesus has shown up. All right, Ethan, you need to feed these people. These people are hungry. It's time to eat. You go ahead and do it. And then, so what are you thinking at that time? I don't know how. And so we go back to that earlier statement, and we kind of think, wow, let go and let God. But God is actually telling him, God in flesh, Jesus Christ is telling him, you need to do it. And what we'll see here is that oftentimes is that Jesus is using individuals to fulfill his task. Because although he says that, although we know that Jesus is the one that provides the meal, who is the one that hands it out? It's the disciples. And so let's go ahead and read here, Mark chapter 6. We're going to read, 30 through 44. And we see how Jesus does, he gives them a responsibility, he gives them a task, and although that we can just sit back and say, God's in control, God is doing this, but God many times uses individuals to fulfill his task. And so let's go ahead and look. Mark chapter 6, verses 30 through 44. It says, the apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest for a while. For many were coming and going, they had no leisure even to eat. Let's just stop there for just a minute. What had happened here is that, the disciples had just gotten back from a missions trip. They had, Jesus had sent the 12 out, 2 by 2. Kind of like if you look around the room, if you're the person sitting next to you, and you're saying, all right, we're going on a missions trip together. All right, just the 2 of us. And we're going from this town to this town to this town. And, there's demons that are being cast out. People are being healed. God's grace is being revealed to these individuals. And, from your little missions trip, just the 2 of you being sent out. Let's just take you guys for example. You guys going out. You're going from Byron, and then you're heading into Duran, and then you're heading into Flint, and then you're heading down to Fenton, and then you're heading down to Argentine and Linden. It's just all along the line. You're making this big route, and you're walking the whole way. Imagine that. Would you be ready for a break afterwards? Absolutely. And this is what they're doing. And so they're worn out, they're tired. And imagine that too. You're not just going out and just kind of, leisurely taking this trip. You're out working. And it's hard. Just like last summer, we went on that trip to Sandusky. Let's see, how many of you guys were on that trip last year to Sandusky? Several of you guys were on that trip last year. And it was hot. At the end of the day, it was hot, it was tiring. At the end of the day, we were ready to go out and let's work from like 7, 6 o'clock. Let's make it 5:30 in the morning till like 10 o'clock at night. Was that what you had desired? And then at the end of the week, working night, from beginning of the morning all the way to night, and then we were ready to do that for like 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time? absolutely not. You needed a break. You needed a rest. And these guys, they've been working hard. They've been serving the Lord. They've been on this missions trip, and now it's time for a break. They needed a rest. They needed a vacation. And so he says to them in verse 31, he says, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest for a while." For many were coming and going. They had no leisure even to eat. I mean, they were just worn out to the bone. I mean, it's just to their core. They just needed some relaxation. And they went away in a boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and began to teach them many things. And when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send them away, go into the surrounding countryside and villages, and buy them something, for they can buy themselves something to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said, "Well, how many loaves do you have here? Well, go and see." When they had found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then he commanded them to all sit down in groups and on green grass. And they sat down in groups by hundreds and by 50s. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the people. He divided the 2 fish among them all, and they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and the fish. And those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. And so we get here, they get to the other side, and there's no possibility for rest. That's what they're longing for. They get in the boat, they're traveling across the sea, they're worn out, they're tired, they're looking for a break. I mean, there's nobody that just can just go, and without ever taking a chance just to sit back and relax. It's good to take a break. And even Jesus was pointing this out to them. You just need a time to relax and to recoup and just to recharge your batteries. And there was no possibility for this. And we see there in verse 34. Verse 34. What was Jesus' response to the crowd there? Verse 34 says, "When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd." And what was his response to them?
He had compassion towards them and taught them.
Yeah, he had compassion. We'll see if you're looking at the parallel passages in Matthew and Luke and John, you'll see also that he stops there. He sees that they need to be taught, but also we see that people need to be healed, and so people are coming in droves, and there's no chance for rest. But Jesus, he's moved to compassion, and he sees them. They're like a lost sheep. They're out there scattered along the field. Jesus is the great shepherd. We see this large group of people, they need direction. He's like, I'm the one to give it to them. And so he has compassion on them. He's moved with compassion on them. He begins to teach them. He begins to heal them. He begins to lead them. Like a shepherd would, like a good shepherd would. What does a good shepherd do when the sheep are hungry? He leads them to a place that they can feed, where they can eat, where they can be filled. And he provides for their needs. And they need a lot. But the disciples, what do you think is going on in their mind? If you were saying, what if we were saying that? What if we were to put there, any of you, say, I was one of the disciples, I'm looking for a break. What would be your mindset at this time? You've already just come back from helping people, from healing people, from this incredible trip. What side would you guys be on? Would you be on the side of, I have compassion as well, or you're on the side of vacation time? It's vacation time. Maybe you talk about your brother heading off for his honeymoon. It's vacation time. I mean, he's not heading down there for a missions trip. He's heading down there to relax and to